In 2013, the Netherlands cut defense to just 1% of GDP and scrapped every last tank, a nation convinced war in Europe was history. Now, with Russian submarine activity in the North Sea soaring by 400% and with over 1,000 missiles battering Ukraine in a single year, everything has changed. The Dutch are reversing decades of military decline in what some officials call a new naval arms race. What could drive one of NATO's quietest forces to sound the alarm? And can this transformation happen before it is too late? After the Cold War, Dutch defense policy shifted with remarkable speed. Throughout the 1990s and the 2000s, government after government trimmed military budgets, convinced that large-scale conflict on the continent was a relic of the past. By 2013, defense spending had dropped to just 1% of national gross domestic product, one of the lowest rates in NATO. The consequences were stark. In 2011, the Netherlands eliminated its last tank battalions. A country that once fielded nearly 1,000 Leopard tanks now operated none. This cut was unmatched by any other major NATO ally at the time. The Royal Netherlands Navy faced its own constraints. The backbone of its submarine force consisted of 4 Walrus-class boats, all launched from 1989 to 1994. These submarines, once cutting-edge, had become increasingly difficult to maintain, with parts shortages and rising costs straining the fleet. The surface fleet fared little better. 2 Karl Doorman-class frigates, designed in the 1980s, and 4 De Zeven Provinciën-class air defense frigates from the early 2000s remained in service only through repeated life extension programs. Modernization lagged as funding for new platforms was repeatedly delayed. Official reports and Ministry of Defense memoranda from this period detail a persistent lack of resources. Training cycles were shortened, maintenance was deferred, and morale among sailors and officers suffered. The Navy's operational readiness dropped, and the ability to respond to new threats was quietly eroded. For years, the assumption held that Europe was safe, and the Netherlands could afford to scale back. That era is now over. On February 24, 2022, Russian troops crossed into Ukraine. Within weeks, Dutch intelligence briefings described a sharp escalation in the North Sea. Naval analysts tracked a 400% increase in Russian submarine activity, with unfamiliar sonar contacts and electronic signatures appearing off Dutch and British coasts. By spring 2024, over 1,000 Russian missiles had struck Ukrainian targets, fueling anxiety in The Hague about the reach and intensity of modern warfare. In the Dutch parliament, the sense of distance from conflict vanished. Defense Minister Ruben Brekelmans, newly appointed and facing mounting threat reports, addressed the nation on September 5, 2024, saying, "There is war on the European continent. The Netherlands can also become involved in an armed conflict. That is why we must strengthen the armed forces more quickly." His warning was paired with immediate action: 2.4 billion euros in emergency defense funding, fast-tracked for naval procurement and readiness. Classified intelligence summaries circulated among senior officials, describing not just the rise in hostile submarine patrols, but also the vulnerability of Dutch undersea cables and energy infrastructure. Policy analysts called it a wake-up call. Overnight, the government abandoned its decades-long caution. That era is now over. In 2022, the Ministry of Defense budget stood at 12.9 billion euros. It is projected to nearly double, hitting 24 billion euros by 2025. That brings Dutch spending to 2% of gross domestic product, meeting NATO's target for the first time in years. Behind these numbers is a clear intent to transform a modest navy into a force with 10 major surface combatants by 2041. The plan calls for 4 next-generation anti-submarine warfare frigates jointly developed with Belgium, and a full recapitalization of the 4 De Zeven Provinciën-class air defense frigates. This will bring the total to 10 major warships, each equipped for high-end operations in contested waters. Financial officials inside the ministry describe the new budget as historic in scope, with multi-year contracts already being signed and shipyard slots reserved out to the late 2030s. The pace and scale of this expansion are unprecedented in Dutch post-war history, and every euro is now tracked as both a national investment and a strategic commitment. On March 11, 2025, the Netherlands crossed a threshold few expected. From the deck of HNLMS De Ruyter, a Tomahawk-capable missile arced into the Atlantic sky, confirming the Dutch Navy as the world's 4th Tomahawk-capable fleet. The order, 175 Tomahawks, secured through a foreign military sale worth 2.19 billion euros, instantly redefined the country's reach. Each missile brings a range of over 1,600 kilometers, placing distant targets across Europe and beyond within Dutch striking distance for the first time in modern history. Expert Brian Clark notes, a 175 missile inventory puts long-range hard power back in Dutch hands for the first time in decades. The integration process demanded months of joint work with United States Navy teams, adapting Dutch systems to the tactical Tomahawk weapons control system and encrypted data links. The result is a Navy no longer limited to defense, but capable of precision land attack, coalition strike, and credible deterrence. The Tomahawk leap transforms the Dutch fleet from a shield into a spear, one that now depends on sustained United States technical support for software, targeting, and maintenance. Submarine warfare is returning to the heart of Dutch naval planning. 4 Orca-class submarines, contracted to Naval Group and to RH Marine, are scheduled for delivery between 2034 and 2037. These boats, based on the French Barracuda class but tailored for Dutch requirements, will replace the aging Walrus fleet and bring advanced quieting, sensors, and European weapon integration. The Orca class is designed for both deep-water patrol and covert intelligence roles, supporting NATO's northern maritime defense posture. Their arrival will close a decades-long gap in undersea capability and place the Netherlands among the few European nations fielding a modern, networked submarine force. But the Royal Netherlands Navy is not relying on crewed platforms alone. New 12-meter unmanned surface vehicles are being procured for anti-submarine warfare. Each of these unmanned surface vehicles can patrol for up to 96 hours without a crew, deploying variable depth sonar and relaying contacts to command ships or to shore. Naval technical officers describe these autonomous craft as a force multiplier, expanding sonar coverage and making it harder for hostile submarines to operate undetected in the North Sea. Together, the Orca class and these unmanned surface vehicles represent a layered approach to undersea defense, marrying human expertise with distributed, persistent sensors. This investment sets the stage for an industrial and operational challenge, delivering these platforms on time and at scale. Damen Shipyards is undergoing a 60 million euros upgrade, expanding its capacity to handle the surge in naval orders. New facilities, automation systems, and workforce training programs are being rolled out to meet delivery targets for the next generation of frigates and support vessels. Alongside these investments, the Dutch government has launched a national maritime manufacturing agency to coordinate industrial output and supply chains across the sector. NATO integration is central to every decision. Admiral Rob Bauer is now chair of NATO's military committee, and he has emphasized that the new Dutch fleet is designed for operational plug-and-play within alliance task groups. He said that interoperability is not a slogan, it is a requirement. Capacity studies from the Ministry of Defense highlight both the opportunity and the risk. Rapid expansion is possible, but only if the industrial base and alliance standards move in lockstep. Modern anti-submarine warfare in the Royal Netherlands Navy revolves around sensor fusion and rapid response. The upcoming anti-submarine warfare frigates will combine advanced low-frequency sonar arrays with real-time networking to spot even the quietest adversaries. The NH-90 helicopters, expanding from 19 to 25 units, are the fleet's airborne hunters. They launch from frigate decks, deploying dipping sonar and sonobuoys to localize threats, then strike with Mark 54 lightweight torpedoes. Operators coordinate across sea and air platforms, using secure data links to share contact information instantly. This layered approach means a submarine detected by a towed array can be prosecuted by a helicopter within minutes. Success depends on timely delivery of these assets. Each delay leaves a gap in the North Sea defensive screen. Delivery schedules stretch deep into the 2030s, raising doubts across the political spectrum. Parliamentary debates reveal mounting anxiety over a possible gap in Dutch naval power, as legacy ships retire before their replacements are ready. Critics like Nick Childs and Stein Mitzer point to the risk of shipyard bottlenecks and untested supply chains. The Orca-class submarine deal, awarded to France's Naval Group, triggered protests from labor unions and opposition members of parliament who argue that Dutch jobs and expertise are being sidelined. Public demonstrations in The Hague and sharp cost critiques echo through committee hearings. With the first new submarines not expected until 2034 and full fleet renewal stretching to 2041, questions linger over whether the Netherlands can close its vulnerability window before the next crisis arrives. Today, the Netherlands spends more on defense than at any point since the Cold War. As Europe's security landscape shifts, every new frigate or submarine signals that peace cannot be taken for granted. The stakes now ride not on memories of war, but on preparations for what comes next.